Okay. Hi everyone. This is Sarvesh here from MediaNama. I have with me Shakun, who runs TickleCharge. It's a payment gateway solution for high-risk businesses, and we thought it would be interesting to get to know what high-risk businesses are and what TickleCharge does. And the perfect person to answer that is Shakun here with us. Hi Shakun. So I'll just jump right into it without any other this thing. You can give a introduction to your company if you want, but uh, yeah, the first question that came up to my mind was what are high risk businesses and why are they considered high risk?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarvesh, for first, inviting me and us coordinating. I think this is the third try, but finally we've managed to. So, okay, so so Tickle Charge is a service by Tickle Life. We started working in the sexuality industry, but then we understood that, this is considered to be high risk as an industry, and that is the reason why discoverability is such a big problem with all of us globally. So while that's how it started, we started understanding that we would have to understand other industries which are also considered high risk in order to cater to the industry which I was interested in. So long story short, we ended up becoming a holistic high risk industry payment provider, payment solution providers. So if I explain to you what is high risk is, so there are two kinds of merchant accounts. So anybody who's doing a business for a bank, for any financial service, they are considered to be as a merchant. And each merchant falls under a certain category, and each merchant gets some code from the banks. Okay. So some categories are very simple. So suppose if you are a merchant, you have an online business or an offline business, a customer comes to you, they buy something, they pay the money goes to the bank, the complete system, and it easily comes to your account. So the banks, the processors, everybody has to just do a certain kind of work, which is easily getting it done, in a seamless manner. But what happens is a lot of time, a lot of merchants, or even some categories, they start getting a lot of chargebacks. So what chargeback means is dispute from their customers. And this is very interesting. For a lot of industries, these disputes happen because of the taboo. So I'll give you a very small example for any industry. So the industry, if I look at, is gaming. Okay. So iGaming especially. When any payments are made, okay, it ultimately goes in your statements. And you might be showing your statements to your partner, or your statements are seen by your employer or by your insurance. It could be anyone. And then if there are so many entries which is related to iGaming, that give that, the perception is wrong. So what a customer ends up doing is going for disputes, even if the merchant is not at fault. Hey, I was not gaming, somebody just swiped by mistake. So let me just go. So usually what happens in an ideal scenario is you would have asked for a refund. But when the industry is something which comes with a taboo, it's the first reflex action of any customer.
Okay.
Yeah. So when
service, but then because of the stigma around it, they
exactly
transaction of
exactly, because like when we started, we were thinking about, hey, why is sexual well-being as a whole such a high risk industry? Because it's simple. I would only go to a sex therapist if I need some support. I will only buy a toy because I want to buy a toy, right? I will watch porn because I want to watch porn. It's not like somebody is forcing me into watching porn. Correct? But then what happens is if you go to a therapist, the therapist is usually okay. If I look at US, the approximate figure is 200 per consultancy. So $200 is nobody going to pay from their pocket. So they're going to use the insurance.
Insurance, yeah.
But then usually the insurance goes to your office. And suppose if your office gets to know, so this person spent $600, because obviously you'll go multiple times on sex therapy. So imagine what kind of perception comes.
Got it.
So you quickly say, I did not do it. So that's the problem for a lot of industries. But otherwise, overall, what happens is whenever the chargeback is more, and it could be even for a shoe company, it could even be a fan company, it could be anyone. So the banks, the acquirer banks, and the processors have to do a lot of work because they have to sort out the dispute. They have to give the money back to the customer. There are so many extra costs involved, so a lot of services involved. So then they start saying that, hey, you know what? This is going to be a hard bet. So let us put it in high risk. So whenever you go for any payment provider, they always ask if they're verifying you initially, which doesn't happen in India and doesn't happen with PayPal, doesn't happen with Stripe, is they expect to see your records first, last 3 months as a business, because they want to understand what are the chargebacks. If all your other documents are ready, because then they'll be like, okay, so I need to spend this much extra money because this client has the potential of a lot of work. That's one. The second thing is globally, even like RBI, Visa, MasterCard, they have to take care of three things. Okay. Number one is that the financing is not done to any terrorist organization. Number two is there's no money laundering. And number three is there is no trafficking and child pornography or something to do with children. So when you have to take care of all these three things, you see which are the industries which would make it the easiest to do any of these three things. So gaming, crypto is easy for, both of these things, right?
Yeah.
Anything to do with content. So if you're talking about, everybody talks about OnlyFans, right? And OnlyFans was also getting flagged by Visa.
Yeah.
So OnlyFans is a content generated platform. Okay. How do you make it a point that nobody is putting a kid's video or nobody is taking consent or there is no trafficking involved? It's very difficult to do it. But the banks and the processors need this guarantee from them. So when you automatically come from any of these industries, that happens. The number fourth industry is going to be CBD, magic mushrooms, psychedelic industry. Here also, we have to understand one thing. Like I mentioned consent here. Same thing. So when you're taking any psychedelics, it plays with your head.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And there are multiple categories in everything. So CBD also has multiple categories, marijuana. The question is, hey, if I can sell CBD, why can't I sell magic mushrooms? But you cannot sell magic mushrooms because when you're using magic mushrooms, it plays with your head, and you do not know how you're doing things.
Okay.
That's why these are very complicated. If there's any ambiguity,
so the compliance clause just doesn't seem justified for traditional operators. It's easier to just wash them off as
Exactly. So because I'll give you an example why PayPal and Stripe keeps on deplatforming people. It's very simple because the game for PayPal, Stripe, Razorpay, Paytm, all of them is about the number game. How many customers they can get. Because even if you see any press releases, it talks about 100 million users.
Yeah.
It isn't about the transaction numbers, most of the time. So the first priority is always given to the number of users. So when you're giving the numbers of users, how will you verify all of these things? So like the new rules, if I look at a region like Europe, has even added 2 more verification components. So one is VASP.
One is what?
VASP. VASP is virtual asset. VASP is for cryptocurrencies. So it's virtual asset service provider. So you need to, if you have a company which is into crypto, which is into adult platforms, which is into except CBD, into any of these industries, you still need to go and get yourself registered there because that's a verification that how is the money going, because it's crypto. And this is done for again, for anti-trafficking. It is done for that you're not going to be funding any terrorist organization and there's no money laundering happening. And then top of that, you will have to go to Visa and MasterCard for them to also verify your account again. So at the end of the day, any application is 10 to 15 different documents along with verification of the business that you're doing, the content that there is on your website. So imagine if PayPal, Stripe, Razorpay started doing this.
Got it.
It's very problematic, and almost it's very interesting. The last list that I had, there are approximately 365 sensitive words that are flagged
Okay.
by MasterCard and Visa card online. So then even those words are evaluated on their websites to see, are they using any of those words?
Oh, interesting.
So it's very complicated for people who are just doing normal, like for everyone else. But then again, a lot of time you will hear like, hey, I was just selling clothes and I've been deplatformed. So why is that happening? That's happening because of chargebacks.
Okay.
So now there are services which we will also try to bring in next few months. How do we make it a point that the chargebacks are lesser?
So yeah, that's where I wanted to come to. Like, so you listed a lot of the problems with high-risk companies for like the reasons why traditional operators don't. But how does TickleCharge address these concerns? So because
So what
chargeback is something that will happen even with your customers, right? Like,
exactly? So these are all the problems. So we understand that our revenue or our aim is not to come back and tell you, hey, we have millions of users or customers. Our thing is very clear. Let's get this entire ecosystem in place. So like I was giving you an example of anybody who is in the sexuality industry or gaming industry, because these two are having similar problems as we speak. So when they come to us, we get them verified. We work with one of the processors who understand. So we are working with multiple processors globally, and we're working with multiple acquirer banks globally. So then we become like a channel. So that's how you create the ecosystem. And we understand that each processors and each banks will understand a specific industry.
okay.
So example, if I'm looking out for crypto, anybody who's in the crypto industry, or anybody is into blockchain. So imagine in blockchain, so many different things are coming. There's wedding happening, people are selling NFTs, people are, paying for different commodities. There is gaming happening. So then, even though this is crypto, there are 4 to 5 different verticals. So then we have to choose which vertical, which processor, and which bank will understand. And the acquirer bank will give, the guarantee that I trust this merchant and I'll work with it. Okay. And then TickleCharge will provide the payment gateway.
Okay.
But ultimately, we end up providing everything, like from getting you set with the right processor, with the right bank, as an acquirer bank, not your bank. Okay. And what happens is, this is something that all high-risk payment gateways were doing, as in they were not like selecting, they were just like, take it or leave it as number one problem. But if you look at the transaction rates, nobody gives less than 10%. And I'm not even talking about the hidden costs. So imagine if you're not even making money and you have to give per transaction 10%. So this is interchange plus rate. So suppose 10% plus $25 or 25 cents per transaction, plus there will be approximately 30 to 40 hidden costs.
So this is what other high-risk gateways are charging.
Exactly. So I'm just giving an example.
How does a traditional operator who's dealing with non-high-risk businesses charge?
So they usually do not use interchange.
Okay.
Their cost, like, the bigger cost that you look at in high risk would be like, 500 is going to Visa card as it is annually. So they will take it. The
Okay.
normal operators would not charge you that much money.
Okay.
But if you look at it, even they would never tell you what are the hidden costs. So I'll give you an example of Stripe. So Stripe is a very, like a traditional operator. But if you try today sending something, and if your friend is trying something, you will see that the transaction rates are different. So they're also following the same concept. But here what happens is, because it is high risk, so everybody puts a lot of markup.
Okay.
So it's just like, hey, you know what? Technically, it should be 3%, which is the bank and the processors giving. But ultimately, what goes to the user or the merchant is 10 to 15 to 16 to 20%. So they end up paying so much. So the misconception that all of us have is that these industries make a lot of money, but most of the chunk of the money goes back to the financial departments. So what we are doing is, hey, if it is 3%, so let us give them the 3%, because if they will make money, and that's when we will make money. And then, then they can actually put money when the money is needed to streamline their process rather than taking money under the table, which happens because if you're paying so much and if you have so many compliances, how would you do it?
Yeah.
The second problem is tech. So I'll give an example. So there are approximately 4 to 5 major high-risk processors, payment processors, who also provide the payment gateway in the world. I'm not saying there are not more, they are, but these are the major chunk.
Yeah.
So if you go with any of them, they will give you the developer document, the API to incorporate on your website. And after that, you're at your own mercy. So the tech is, like when we were kids, we saw those shitty dashboards and we saw like it's so complicated. We need a team of 3 people, coders, to sit and incorporate the payments.
Yeah.
That's where they are. They're still in the old age because they don't care. Their
Okay.
market is clear.
And how does TickleCharge do it?
So we have created a layer of tech on top of it. Something similar or something simple like Stripe. So we are looking at role model as Stripe, which is simple, but we do understand we are not Stripe. Okay.
Yeah.
Because Stripe actually gave so many inputs about how do you revolutionize, and that's what we are doing. See, right now we are not touching India, and the reason is very simple, because India, you also need UPI. And most of the people, at least in the sexual well-being industry, which is growing here, uses UPI, their customers.
Yeah.
So that's another layer of it. And also here, the rules are very different from the rules which, the US as a country follows, or which Europe follows.
So,
Like Europe
which
is the
countries do
easier.
you operate in right now?
I'm sorry?
Which countries do you operate in right now?
So we operate in Europe. We
Okay.
operate in North America. So we've started with these two, but we're actually, experimenting, and we are working with 2 companies in Australia.
Okay.
And they are into gaming, by the way. So it's just like, every country has different rules, but still these these 3 continents or components have similar rules. And here, at least the high risk businesses are making money. In India, whoever would come under high risk doesn't make money. Like a colleague of mine, or somebody from the industry, she runs a dating site for LGBTQ. She's been taking money in her personal account from day one because nobody's giving her the payment gateway. We were rejected by Razorpay when we wanted to do workshops in India as sex
Are there
education.
any high-risk payment gateways operating in India that you know of?
So a lot of them do give you accounts for a while, but then they take you off in between whenever they are flagged. It's a complete. If you can either do high risk or you can do something else, because see, there's also another problem. So suppose if you are my merchant, okay, I would need to see your bank accounts. I would need a certificate from you, from your bank, which says that, hey, this person has a bank account with me, which for any other industry should be a piece of cake. But a lot of people who have high risk, it takes them 2 to 3 weeks to get that from their banks.
Okay.
Because banks do not want anything to do with high risk on the BNI, because they just are like, it's too complicated. And what if they are doing, like I said, trafficking, money laundering, because unfortunately, because of so many compliances, we've completely made them, like when you do not know things, they become very gray.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. And what it leads to is people who are even doing the right work, like a lot of CBD startups have come up.
Hmm.
Just because they're putting everything clear, they're not able to make money
Okay.
because the entire ecosystem is all haywire. Sex tech as an industry is considered to be $121 billion by 2025. But most of them are not able to make money because the time that you start making money, you will be flagged by whatever payment gateway you're using, traditional, because they'll be like, hey, how's this money? Like the processor would ask like, hey, how is this merchant making money? Because this merchant is getting a lot of money in.
And then there's doubts which come in, even if they're doing proper work.
Exactly. And since you have not verified them, like you can make by your email ID a Stripe or a PayPal account right away, and you can start taking money. Right? You don't need like a document. You can give the documents later. So when this question comes in, so there are two ways of taking care of it. One is they see how important is this merchant for me. If yes, great. And if no, then they either deplatform or they take it out. And the second thing is how payments work is in two ways. One is a processor or payment service provider gives everybody a different merchant code.
Okay.
So that means you're directly working with the acquirer bank.
Hmm.
So you are a merchant on record. That's what we do. Okay. But companies like suppose OnlyFans. Okay. What they do is they have just gotten one merchant on record, which is
Okay.
OnlyFans. So anybody underneath, whoever is making money, all those content providers
Uh-huh.
are making money via them. So they
Oh,
get the money, they give the
and
money to
then
them.
you said based on whatever
So then
the
what is happening is if suppose any one of them do something wrong and
got
it is flagged because G2 is mandatory. So every month all those platforms are evaluated. So then when this thing is happening, it's going to impact OnlyFans.
platform.
And
Okay.
then that's when OnlyFans will go off. So according to me, one of the reasons why OnlyFans wanted to change was because it was getting flagged because of people.
Hmm.
So now what you have to actually do is from MasterCard Visa card, if you have content creators, you need written documents from each one of them. What are they putting?
Okay.
That they're putting with their consent. And if they do something, they can take them off. So imagine it's
The
actually the
compliance
most,
burden is just
it's at a different level. So we can choose, like, even as TickleCharge, do we want to do high risk or do we want to do traditional? Because we can't do both then. Because
yeah.
it's so labor intensive. Like right now, we are actually looking out to work with banks
Hmm.
directly who will give accounts to people. Because a lot of companies they don't have an account. So
Oh,
they're literally taking money in their personal accounts. Like they'll be making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, and they're taking literally in the bank personal account because no bank is giving them an account. And they're paying taxes. They're doing everything correct.
is there in the US and Europe at least, is there anything in the regulatory front that's like in the works to address this issue of high risk payment businesses not getting
See,
in?
see, that is the reason why you have to be always one step ahead. Like I said, now there are new rules in place. You need to get WASP done. Then you need to get your payment gateway should be on the payment processor has to be see that you are compliant. You have to know what kind of words that you're using on your website, what kind of images you're using, is your terms and condition. So like I'll tell you what happens. So suppose if you come, okay, I as a company am expecting an account. The first thing you will do is you'll come to my website as a processor. See, do I have a terms and condition? Do I have a refund policy? My refund policy needs to be very strong. Do I have a phone number? Do I have working hours? A lot of us do not even have those, because we don't think about them. Why do I need this? Wherever you're taking money, do you have, that ticker which says, I accept the refund and the terms and condition. Usually it is terms and condition and privacy, MediaNama, so privacy, but nobody talks about refund.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example, a very funny example of somebody I knew. She was flagged by Visa that she's used the term rape on her website. And she could not figure out where has she used rape. So she had to literally look at the website from like any and every place.
Oh God.
Yeah. She could not find rape. And then later on, she had to hire people to find that rape because there was no rape. Because unfortunately, it was not even rape. It was grape.
Oh my God. No.
So once you start coming in the, like in the bracket of high risk, then you have to be so cautious that you always have to keep on, being 2 steps ahead of what's coming. What are the new words? The images that I'm using. You can't use blood. Even if you're menstrual platform, you can't use blood. You should not have weapons or even an axe. In fact, sometimes even the colors that you're using, because ultimately it's all about algorithm. So how are they developing their algorithms? So we were talking to new people that, hey, these are the new policies that are going to come in April. None of them knew that there are new policies that are coming in April. So, and there's also another angle. How do you make it a point as a merchant that your chargeback is low? So there are 2 ways. Usually what happens is, if suppose somebody did not like something, like, if I'm selling this bottle of water, if somebody doesn't like it, I will either say, keep it, or I'll say, I give a fuck. One of these 2 things. Unfortunately, the merchant has to say, keep it, and I'm going to refund you the money as well.
Oh, okay.
Because then in the statements, it would be a refund. It's not chargeback.
Oh, wow.
So now there are services, and we will also in the next month or 2, we'll start launching another service which talks about, if I am your customer, Visa, MasterCard will always have my history, my card history. So they can flag to you before, hey, Shakun spent her card on your platform, but she has a history of disputes.
Okay.
So might as well, just return and say thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know, Second thing is, again, about, even if you get charged back, try to resolve chargeback in 24/7. 24 hours, return. Like return, call, do whatever, which a lot of people do not do.
Okay.
For any company, irrespective of whether you call yourself high risk or not, you should not have more than 2% as your chargeback.
Okay.
Which mostly doesn't happen. And I'm even talking about any of the industries, so shoemakers. So when you're talking about, like what kind of percentage other companies give or other payment processors traditional give, if you look at it, they also look at the same thing. If there are a lot of chargebacks, your transaction rate will start going up, because they have to do these things.
Yeah. So the regulatory challenge is one thing. There's another aspect of legal challenges, right? I'm assuming this is an industry where you will find some lawsuits or cases going on. Is that true? And how do you navigate?
So legal just happens actually if, so the big players, the first hire is always a legal person. I am not a big player, but the first hire was a sex tech lawyer when we started with sex tech. And the reason was that it is so complicated that people who are not in the industry never understood. So like when I registered, it was US. I was thinking, you know what, it's going to be simple. I'm just doing a sex ed platform. It's chill, there's no nudity, nothing. No bank wanted to give me a bank account. So I actually had to hire a lawyer to help me get a bank account. So imagine I'm giving my money and paying $2,000 to get my money in a bank account.
Yeah,
So
it's a
second is because of the legality that we're talking about, your refund policy, your terms and condition, the if you're a content platform, then what are those legal components that you need to know? You need to have the document signed with each and every person. You need to make it a point, or you actually have to answer how are you making it a point that no person under 18 is using your platform. So it's a legal document. It can't be like, hey, I just have a pop-up which says, are you 18 or above? It
yeah.
can't be that. It has to be very, very specific. You are using multiple servers in multiple countries. You would not be using a single bank account. You would be using multiple bank accounts. Your rules have to be very clear with the kind of company that you're setting in. A lot of time, like, even when I'm just applying for some accelerator or some VC fund, there's no industry which we fall under.
Yeah.
So if I had to create another company, I don't know what I will go under. So then, you need a lawyer to actually get it done. Like when I started, I thought, okay, so the lawyer who's helping me, set the company and pretty known law firm, everybody gets registered a company via them. And my question was, hey, I need terms and condition. So it was pretty evident they wanted to sell it to me, the service, but they did not understand what the terms and condition are for our industry. So it's very easy to pinpoint in this industry. So everybody has to be way ahead
Mhm.
rather than way behind. Then a lot of time banks will flag you. In fact, bank flags a lot in India.
Okay.
Even companies like gaming. So gaming is gaming. They are not doing anything, but they get
Mm.
flagged that, hey, is it gambling? Because gaming in the mind is gambling.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the rules have been made long back, you know. So you need law, legal, and compliance. These two things work together. And this is actually the maximum expense
Okay.
of this industry because there's no question about not having a demand. There's no question of not having a supply. The problem is with the compliance and the legal component, and which is leading to the main thing, which is payments as well. So that's what I say. If anybody wants to get into any of these industries and somebody says that, hey, what is your moat? The moat is that you're in this industry and you've stayed.
Okay. Yeah, I think I do have a lot more questions, but I want to keep this short for our viewers. So I'll just end with one last question I had on what your TickleCharge's roadmap looks like in the next year, and do you plan on coming to India anytime soon?
See, India, I am not too sure. We'll see how it goes. But the roadmap is very simple. Because we are providing the tech infrastructure for the payments, the next thing that we are going to be doing is we are going to be applying for becoming a processor. And then ultimately, what we've understood is it might sound like a very big feat, but we would have to go the financial services. We would have to have a bank
Okay.
because bank is needed for a lot of the blocks which are holding on, the time that it takes to get people done, the time that so much money is being, like I said, it's under the table and it's not signed for because they don't even know what bank to give it to. So it's just about creating the entire ecosystem, and that's what we want to do because there's so much to be done. It's in
Yeah.
old ages. We have to bring it to at least 21st century.
Yeah, I think this is one of these industries that's just stuck in the past because of all the taboo. And you have to deal with a lot of social stigma and taboo as well, right? That's not something that's plaguing other industries, I'm assuming.
A lot. People are saying, "What do you do?" And I'm like, into high risk, and then I don't get responses. So, so
Uphill,
huh?
it's an uphill task for this industry.
Yeah, but that's the interesting part. No, if you do not end up doing something which is big, might as well not do it.
Yeah. Yeah, on that note, I think thanks a lot, Shakun, for giving us this time. I hope to actually do a follow-up interview. We'll ask our readers what they want to know more about your company and what services you provide. And I hope I get to talk to you again soon. Thank you
I
so
would.
much for taking time to talk to
Thank
us.
you.